Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
The president has not read the Mueller report or the Constitution, and that is why the president once again today proved himself to be the most ignorant person in the history of the American presidency and possibly American politics by saying that he would turn to the judges that he has appointed to the United States Supreme Court to save him from impeachment. That will never happen, but it does seem that today is the first day of what promises to be a Trump administration illegal war, with every House committee seeking information and witnesses from the Trump administration. And we are very fortunate tonight, on this first night of this epic legal battle of Trump versus the Congress, to be able to take our constitutional guidance from our next guest, Harvard Law professor Lawrence Tribe. He's a professor of constitutional law at Harvard Law School and has argued dozens of cases in the United States Supreme Court, something that most lawyers don't get to do even once in their career. And joining us now is Professor Lawrence Tribe. He is co-author of To End a Presidency, The Power of Impeachment. And Professor Tribe, I think your impeachment book, is it about a year old now?
Right. It came out in May of 2018, and the paperback with a new epilogue just came out in March of this year. So depends on how you count.
And much of what you, the guidance you gave us in that book was in many ways putting the brakes on talk about impeachment that we were hearing then. This story has changed dramatically to where we are tonight.
Certainly has. I was saying impeachment can be very divisive. It can have a big backlash. It can look like we're trying to undo an election. So we have to go slowly and carefully. But after the Mueller report came out with all of its astonishing revelations about the systematic and sustained Russian attack on our democracy and the president's sustained efforts to obstruct inquiry into that attack, even inquiry of a counterintelligence type that would enable us better to protect ourselves from ongoing attack in 2020, it became clear that there was no time to lose. And so that's why I'm very much in favor of the kinds of hearings that Representative Nadler, as chairman of Judiciary, is engaged in now. They're not called impeachment hearings, but the impeachment process, for anyone who understands what's going on, is underway. It's underway, but they don't have the bumper sticker yet. They're looking into all of the evidence, connecting the dots, and as your earlier guest said, putting live witnesses on the air so that people can see for themselves, through people like Don McGahn, just how corrupt and fundamentally criminal this president was. And we cannot assume that public opinion will be completely impervious to that demonstration. That's why the president is trying to shut them all up, trying to stonewall in this unprecedented way, not invoking real legal privileges, but just saying, I'm the president, And I say I don't want any of you to cooperate with Congress. Who's Congress anyway? A bunch of pals. And it's an astonishing exercise in arrogant obstruction of justice. It's very much like, but much worse than, what Nixon did, leading to Article 3 of his articles of impeachment, the article about contempt of Congress. That's what we're witnessing. We're witnessing contempt of Congress, contempt of law, contempt for the American people.
Yeah, I have that article of impeachment right here, and it is actually exactly what the president is doing today. It says, on this article of impeachment, it says that he failed without lawful cause or excuse to produce papers and things as directed by duly authorized subpoenas issued by the Committee on the Judiciary of the House of Representatives and willfully disobeyed such subpoenas. That was an article of impeachment. It says in that article that the president interposed the powers of the presidency against the lawful subpoenas of the House of Representatives. What the president did today was an article of impeachment against Richard Nixon.
And he did it today in a context where the national security is at stake. I mean, bad as Nixon was, with all the cash and the plumbers unit, he wasn't really inviting a hostile foreign power to keep invading our country and our sovereignty. He was not engaging in treacherous betrayal of the American Republic. He was being a scofflaw. He was being a crook. But now we've got somebody who is fundamentally engaged in treachery. Nothing could be more serious. And I have enough faith in the American people to believe that when they see this live and not just in a kind of dead 428-page thing that I'm sure the president hasn't read, but lots of other people who can read haven't read, then I think things will change. But of course, the president is not satisfied with that. He's, as you said, he's threatened to go to his Supreme Court. An amazing idea.
Professor Trabb, I am embarrassed to use your brain power for the answer to this question, but let's just pretend that you are visiting an elementary school somewhere in Cambridge, a fourth grade, a second grade, and a kid there.
I've done that.
Of course.
I like doing that.
And a kid there raises his or her hand and says, can the president stop impeachment in the Supreme Court? What would be your answer?
Well, I would say that presidents can't do that. The Supreme Court just a few years ago said that it had no role in the impeachment process. And actually, kids, there's a good reason. Back when the framers met in Philadelphia, they were wondering who should have a role in the removal of a president, in charging him through impeachment and then putting him on trial. And a lot of them initially thought, well, how about the Supreme Court? They wear black robes, they're going to be good guys. And eventually there was an overwhelming rejection of that idea for several reasons. First of all, the president might have appointed some of those guys in black robes or now women in black robes. They can't be objective. Secondly, there was a concern that after a president is kicked out of office, he can still be tried criminally. And that hopefully will happen when this president leaves office, because he's committed a lot of crimes. But who's going to hear the appeal from a criminal conviction of a president? Well, that would have to be the Supreme Court. But they would already have ruled if they had a role in the impeachment process. And then on top of that, there was a concern that the Supreme Court would be too clubby and small and too easy to corrupt, whereas the Senate, they hoped, unfortunately, they might have hoped too much. The Senate would be incorruptible and large. And finally, they thought the Supreme Court wouldn't have the prestige that it would take to stand up to a president of the United States, because the court hadn't yet developed that prestige. So for all those reasons, they said, we're going to have the Chief Justice preside over the Senate, but we're not going to give the court any other role. And that's where it stands now, so that the most ignorant thing the president could possibly have said, and insulting to the justices that he named to the court, Justices Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, was, you're my guys, I'm going to get help from you. I think that nobody would advise him to alienate the court that way, but I'm frankly not all that upset that he did, because now they're going to have more backbone.
It is Thursday, the 25th of April of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. You know, I've been hearing that there's quite a few people who are offended by grits. I don't know. I eat any and all things because if it's served at the family meal, there must be a reason for it. All right. I love grits. I love all kinds of grain anyway, so there you go. Variety is the spice of life. Well, Joe Biden has gotten into the race, and already he's polling higher than, everybody, and got a couple of endorsements. And when I say polling higher against Trump right now. And there's some people that say that they would love to see like a Biden-Warren ticket, a Biden-Harris ticket. I will put it out there that if Biden is chosen, I think that I will go ahead and vote for a Harris-Biden ticket or a Warren-Biden ticket. I think that would be better. I would go for that. And the other way around, of course. I mean, whoever is the Democratic candidate, we will vote for now, won't we? I'm not a big fan of Joe. I like Kamala. And I got to tell you, all these stories from the Republicans about how boring Elizabeth Warren is, man, she was rousing in that women's forum yesterday. My God. I followed her career somewhat. I don't, listen to her speeches necessarily. I've seen her give some talks. But as a stump speech, I thought she did quite well. To the point that she told her story and the story of America so well, it actually brought a tear to my eye. I was touched. And lacking charisma? I don't think so. She's got a lot of charisma. She's got the charisma of the university professor that she was, and she can command a room. And the other part that I really like about her is that she knows her policy because she's written the policy herself. So she's coming out with actual policies. Mayor Pete, a lot of platitudes. He has... I'll just qualify this. I'm not a big fan of Mayor Pete. I think his policies towards people of color in his area out there where he's mayor is woeful to, shall we say, bordering on bigotry. Let's be clear. So I'm not a big fan of Mayor Pete. But Mayor Pete does appeal to a kind of NPR, New Yorker liberal intelligentsia. The guy plays piano and speaks many languages. All right. Well, Mayor Julian speaks many languages too, but nobody talks about that. Cory Booker has a Rhodes Scholarship. No one talks about his Rhodes Scholarship, but Mayor Pete, he's a Rhodes Scholar. He plays piano. Yeah, well, that's great. A lot of platitudes. Woeful on stated policies for now. And quite woeful on the policies that he's followed while he was mayor, or led while he was mayor. So, Warren, I like Warren a lot more, even. And I'm a big fan of Kamala Harris. So, and I will say, I wish that Mayor Julian was getting more traction, because I really like him too. I really do. Well, what's on the rest of the menu today? Of course, at the top, that was Lawrence Tribe. And Lawrence breaking down about, Trump doesn't know S about America. And I only use the S instead of the HIT part because it's still early in the morning out here, at least early enough. Okay, I know it's getting late, but it's still early. He doesn't know anything about America. He has never cared about America. He's only cared about making money. And by an accident of birth, he was born here. So he doesn't know I mean, he thinks that his installed justices on the Supreme Court can overturn his impeachment. Now, I did read an article by Ian Millhiser, the great constitutional reporter and expert, that maybe Trump's right. Maybe in this instance, he can go to the Supreme Court because they'll bend over backwards for a Republican. The 5 justices on the Supreme Court seem to be very partisan, don't they? Yeah. And he used the census case as a example for the possibilities of what this Supreme Court could do for Donald Trump. They could give him a solid. And that being that all precedent in the census case, the actual stated law, the actual law that's on the books now is absolutely ignored by these 5 justices. They are now concerned about the Voting Rights Act that they gutted. I made a joke that really what they're trying to do is protect the Voting Rights Act that they gutted. But actual questions by the 5 Republican justices, and that's what they are, teetered on absolute partisanship by observers in the court. Wilbur Ross was not breaking the law. Wilbur Ross was actually concerned about the voting integrity and allowing people to be able to vote. And the only way to do that is to have a census question, in spite of it, the fact that it's against the law. And in spite of previous court precedent by this court, the decisions by this court, that, experts in a department, who cares about them? It's the political appointees that are important. But Lawrence Tribe says it's impossible. Impeachment doesn't go to the courts. It goes to the legislative branch, first Congress and then the Senate. So Trump doesn't really know his civics. Never has. Hey, what else in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy today? Military widows and their children are paying higher taxes thanks to Trump's tax scam that the GOP pushed through. You could call it the GOP tax scam too, but the GOP is Trump now. So it's the Trump tax scam. A federal judge ruled that Trump cannot tell doctors how to do their job. So no gag rule, buddy. God. And Mike Pence dodged questions and then walked away when pressed on his promotion of the hacked WikiLeaks emails in 2016. They all knew about it. They all lied. And Mike Pence thinks that by being quiet and standing behind the blue curtain over there in a blue suit, he can be president real soon. That's what he thinks. We won't let him get away with it. After the break, we move to the chef's table where U.S. measles cases have hit its highest level since the virus was declared eradicated in the year 2000. And unexpected rainfall revives Iraq's historic marshlands after Saddam drained them during the Second Gulf War. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice the chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the page is our contribute button, or more accurately our link. And if you could become a recurring Patreon to Netroots Radio, your recurring contribution helps us resist as the founders originally intended, and really what, how we're able to keep this powerhouse of resistance resisting is what comes out of our own wallets, and you are our biggest contributors. So thank you for your generosity. If you could contribute really even just the cost of a latte espresso type coffee drink once a month, that goes a long way into helping us pay our bills, and also right now, more importantly, saving to buy new machines, since we have been in continuous broadcast form for 8 years. That's right, we're celebrating our 8th anniversary of continuous resistance 24/7 365 radio, as I mentioned before, as the founders originally intended. And thank you for helping us do that. And I guess I'm asking you to help us do it for another 8 years at least. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so at Netroots Radio, and Tom takes care of that, and we are forever grateful that he does. I take care of at Justice Putnam, and I also post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime. If you would like to follow the show, you can do so by going to at Cookbook West, and podcasts can be found on Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. And they're everywhere. Okay, let's we better get right into these offerings here, since Lawrence Tribe had a very important point to make, and we had to give him time to make it. The great Oliver Willis starts us off here, and of course he is at Share Blue Media. Looks like military widows and widowers received an ugly shock when they filed their taxes this year because of the Republican tax scam. And that Republican tax scam is the Trump tax scam. Republicans are Trump. Trump is the Republican Party. Well, it's caused crushing new tax burdens for many surviving families of fallen soldiers. Military widows and widowers who put their benefits in their child's name saw a significant spike in their taxes this year. Trump has created this burden for the families of those who gave the ultimate sacrifice, because he hates sacrifice. He thinks it's a weakness. Several families told the news journal Tax and Purpose that their burden on taxes had at least quadrupled this year, and that they were completely unprepared for it. We've always had a tax burden, but for me, quadrupling the tax burden of a Gold Star child is completely unfair. It's cruel. I mean, why would you tax a 9-year-old? Asked Jessica Braden Rogers, whose husband, Captain Michael Braden, died in 2012 in Afghanistan. Taxes on her son's benefits went from $1,100 to $4,600. Well, I'm sorry, ma'am, but, there's a lot of rich people that expected your money, and they have to get it, no matter what. Before Trump signed the GOP tax bill that was drawn up behind closed doors, by the way, by his team and his Republican allies in Congress, these survivor benefits were taxed at the parents' tax rate. Now, they are treated the same as a trust or estate, which could be as high as 37%. And the trust and estate of the 1% or the 0.000000000001%. They're not paying 37%. They're not paying a thing, because they have lawyers that can figure that out, and they know what's coming on. So stick it to the widows and the widowers and the little kids. This is an unintended consequence of a tax bill that was slapped together with gum and baling wire to benefit the rich. Representative Jackie Speier, Democrat of California, said in a statement, "Widows and widowers of fallen service members must be made whole. As chair of the Military Personnel Subcommittee, I've directed subcommittee staff to look into this issue and see what needs to be done to rectify this injustice. We might start by eradicating all these Trump people that have infected our government. Well, the Trump tax scam continues to be a failure that only helps super rich Americans and huge corporations. Despite the GOP's grand claims about how the legislation would cut taxes and create jobs, cut taxes for the extremely uber rich, and the only jobs they created was, maybe they're able to hire a couple more chefs, more crew for the yachts. Thanks to these and other failures, only 33% of the public still backs the law. Meanwhile, 62% believe Trump's policies put wealthy people first. The tax scam did not work, and it hurts military families, just like Trump has been doing throughout his presidency. And Desai Martin, also of Share Blue Media, brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A federal judge in Oregon has stopped the Trump administration from implementing its plan to restrict what doctors can discuss with their patients. U.S. District Judge Michael McShane said that he would issue a preliminary injunction to prevent Trump's policy from going into effect as scheduled on May 3rd. At the hearing, McShane called the rule a ham-fisted approach to public health policy and said that the rule prevented doctors from fulfilling their role as medical professionals. The rule would strip federal funds from healthcare organizations where doctors perform abortions, or even simply refer patients who want an abortion to a facility which provides them. I need to remind folks, it is a legal medical procedure and has been since I was in high school. Because it punishes doctors even for giving medical advice to patients in the U.S., the policy is also known as a domestic gag rule. Since the Reagan era, Republican administrations have imposed similar restrictions on international NGOs that receive U.S. funds. This global gag rule causes needless deaths and other health problems for women whenever it is implemented, and actually causes abortion rates to rise, even though it's intended to restrict abortion. And I would say it's not intended to restrict abortion. It is absolutely meant for women to die. The Trump administration was sued by the AMA, Planned Parenthood, and a collection of 20 states over the gag rule, which restricts how Title X funds can be used. Title X is the only federal program dedicated to ensuring low-income Americans have access to family planning services. And even though Title X funds are already prohibited by law from covering abortion, anti-choice politicians often try to use them as a weapon to defund health providers like Planned Parenthood that offer abortion in addition to other health services. Trump is also trying to attack Planned Parenthood and restrict women's health care by redirecting Title X funds to sham health centers that try to talk women out of getting an abortion. People lying to you about health care have First Amendment rights. But telling you the truth, you don't have a First Amendment right to that. It is odd how everything is turned upside down when mobsters rule a democracy. Cody Fenwick of Alternet brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has been indicted by the Justice Department, and Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report has made clear that its release of Democratic emails in 2016 was part of Russia's efforts to interfere with the presidential election. These developments are particularly awkward for Donald Trump and Mike Pence, in light of the fact that during the 2016 election, they aggressively promoted WikiLeaks material. Trump has decided to respond to these facts by simply lying, telling reporters recently, "I know nothing about WikiLeaks." He thinks that America is as stupid as the people who voted for him. Look, the people who voted for him are not America. You know, maybe some of them might be construed as Americans, but they're not America. America is a little bit more colorful than that, shall we say, and a hell of a lot smarter. On Wednesday, which was yesterday, reporter Vaughn Hilliard of NBC News pressed Pence on whether he regrets using WikiLeaks material, and then Pence completely dodged the question. Hilliard posted the exchange on Twitter, and he noted Vice President Mike Pence refuses to answer if, 1, he regrets using hacked emails during the 2016 campaign, and 2, if he pledges not to do so in the next presidential campaign. He then walked away upon attempted follow-up. Yeah, because he's still under a counter-espionage investigation, as well as probably criminal complaints, and anything he does and says now, he knows will be used against him in a court of law. All right, let's get to our break, and when we come back from that break, we are going to go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. Freshwater dolphins live in many of the world's biggest rivers, from the Amazon to the Ganges, and they differ in a lot of ways from their better-known ocean-going cousins.
They have a flexible neck, they have different types of teeth, they can also move their flippers independently in different directions, so they can swim backwards.
Gabriel Melo Santos, a marine biologist at the University of St. Andrews in Scotland.
When I decided that I was going to be a biologist, I just decided that I wanted to study dolphins. And being born in the Amazon, it was only natural to go for the river dolphins.
He says another thing that sets his study subjects apart from marine dolphins are their calls. Over several years, Melo Santos has recorded the sounds of Araguayan river dolphins that came calling at the Mocajuba Fish Market, that's on Brazil's Tocantins River. Then, using sound analysis software, his team fished 237 distinct sound types from the recordings, indicating the dolphins have a wide repertoire. The call collection, published in the journal Peer J, has only a few whistles. Instead, 3/4 of the collected sounds were short two-parters like this one, produced by a female calf as she rubbed her head on her mother's belly. It's a call that's more similar in structure to the ones orcas and pilot whales make to identify a family or social group than to the social whistles of marine dolphins.
These are older lineages, right? So if you understand how these dolphins communicate, we might have a sense to understand how the communication system evolved in different lineages of cetaceans.
Meaning perhaps these calls between mother and calf are, like the river dolphins themselves, an evolutionary relic. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
As the days get longer and the weather warms, people of all ages will start to spring into action. Spring is a great time to breathe fresh air, stretch your arms and legs, and get physically active outdoors. Lack of physical activity contributes to obesity, heart disease, stroke, and other chronic health conditions. Fortunately, many communities are making it easier and safer to be physically active. Neighborhoods across the country are working together to create more public spaces for walking, running, biking, and other physical activities. Adults should get at least 150 minutes of physical activity each week, and children should get 60 minutes a day. If you find it hard to walk to a local recreation center, park, or playground, learn how to make your neighborhood a place that makes healthy living easier. Visit makinghealtheasier.org for information about ways communities can change to get more people outside and moving.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. And you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. Netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
No more immigrants, no more refugees. The country is full, says Donald Trump. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. But not according to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, which has announced that the country needs more immigrant workers and wants to issue more H-2B visas for temporary jobs in the United States. For immigrants, jobs in housekeeping and landscaping in restaurants, hotels, and amusement parks, including workers from Mexico and Guatemala, as well as Jamaica and South Africa.
Some of us are illegal, and some are not wanted. Our work contracts out and we have to.
As a senior immigration analyst at the Cato Institute said, on one hand, we need more people because the country's economy is booming. And on the other hand, we say the country is full, go back. It's impossible to reconcile those positions. There is, of course, a larger point here beyond the issue of worker visas. And that is that immigrants are not the enemy of the country, as Trump insists, but rather the lifeblood of our nation and our democracy.
Adios, mis amigos, Jesus Maria. You won't have a name when you ride the big airplane, and all they will call you will be deportee.
This ACLU Minute is inspired by the enduring words of the songwriter Woody Guthrie, and the voices of Arlo and Emmylou Harris.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1969. The governor of South Carolina sent 1,000 state troopers and National Guardsmen to Charleston, South Carolina. They were sent there to deal with the striking hospital workers who wanted union recognition. The strike had started on March 19th at the Medical College Hospital. A little over a week later, more than 60 black workers from the Charleston County Hospital joined the strike in solidarity. The governor was determined to use every tactic at his disposal to break the strike. He worried that if the strikers were successful, unionization efforts would spread throughout the other sectors of state employees. During the strike, a hotel room of one of the union organizers was bombed by an unknown assailant. Soldiers with bayonets marched through the streets of Charleston. Hundreds of picketers were arrested, including teenagers who had joined the protest. The governor had gone as far as imposing a 9 p.m. curfew on people to keep them off the streets. But the workers were determined to win their rights. The United Auto Workers sent $10,000 to support the striking workers. Civil rights leaders from across the nation came to South Carolina to support the workers. Andrew Young and Ralph Abernathy of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference were among those who were arrested. Coretta Scott King, the widow of Dr. King, gave a speech saying, "Hospital workers have been working full-time jobs at part-time pay. After all, $1.30 an hour is not a wage, it is an insult. I also have another interest in being here," she said, "and that is many of the hospital workers throughout our nation are women, black women. Many of them are the main supporters of their families." The hospital workers were able to win a grievance process and modest pay increase. Although they did not win union recognition, they inspired hospital workers across the country. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Donald Trump has made it clear to House Democrats that they won't get 1 ounce of cooperation from his administration as their various investigations of the Trump presidency move forward. Trump promised Tuesday to fight all the subpoenas. So the Dems are making plans to hold officials in contempt. But they're also gearing up for the likely legal fights ahead, as taking the administration to court may be their only recourse. MSNBC's Brian Williams has more.
The Washington Post reports that Trump, not surprisingly, is opposed to having current and former White House staff testify before Congress, most especially his former White House counsel Don McGahn, who has emerged as one of the stars of the Mueller report. Robert Costa of the Washington Post spoke with the president tonight by phone. The Post quotes Trump as saying there is no reason to go any further, and especially in Congress where it's very partisan, obviously very partisan. And again, Costa and his colleagues also report, quote, the White House plans to fight a subpoena issued by the House Judiciary Committee for former White House counsel Don McGahn to testify. The administration also plans to oppose other requests from House committees for the testimony of current and former aides about actions in the White House described in Mueller's report. White House lawyers plan to tell attorneys for administration witnesses called by the House that they will be asserting executive privilege over their testimony.
The Washington Post's editorial board on Wednesday explained to Donald Trump why Congress has, quote, every right to investigate you. The newspaper's board posted the op-ed after Trump told reporters that he saw no reason to cooperate with congressional investigations following the release of the Mueller report. Harvard law professor Lawrence Tribe explains how the impeachment proceedings are technically already underway.
I'm very much in favor of the kinds of hearings that Representative Nadler, as chairman of Judiciary, is engaged in now. They're not called impeachment hearings, but the impeachment process, for anyone who understands what's going on, is underway. It's underway, but they don't have the bumper sticker yet. They're looking into all of the evidence, connecting the dots, and putting live witnesses on the air so that people can see for themselves, through people like Don McGahn, just how corrupt and fundamentally criminal this president was. And we cannot assume that public opinion will be completely impervious to that demonstration. That's why the president is trying to shut them all up, trying to stonewall in this unprecedented way, not invoking real legal privileges, but just saying, I'm the president, and I say I don't want any of you to cooperate with Congress. Who's Congress anyway? A bunch of pals. It's an astonishing exercise in arrogant obstruction of justice. It's very much like but much worse than, what Nixon did, leading to Article 3 of his articles of impeachment, the article about contempt of Congress. That's what we're witnessing. We're witnessing contempt of Congress, contempt of law, contempt for the American people.
Well, he's running. Joe Biden made it official Thursday morning.
I believe history will look back on 4 years of this president and all he embraces as an aberrant moment in time. But if we give Donald Trump 8 years in the White House, he will forever and fundamentally alter the character of this nation, who we are. And I cannot stand by and watch that happen. The core values of this nation, our standing in the world, our very democracy, everything that has made America America is at stake. That's why today I'm announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
The United States is dealing with the largest outbreak of measles since the disease was declared eliminated in 2000. As of this week, according to CNN, there have been 681 measles cases across 22 states. The health department is planning to issue 2 regulations next week that roll back Obama-era protections for transgender patients while further shielding workers with religious objections to care. The administration will argue that they're simplifying federal rules and will save the health industry billions of dollars. Public health and patient groups worry that vulnerable patients will face more prejudice from doctors and other workers who don't want to treat them. The White House has ordered Trump administration officials to boycott Saturday's White House Correspondents Association's dinner. White House Cabinet Secretary Bill McGinley reportedly told those working within the administration to skip the black tie event meant to celebrate a free press and allow journalists to mingle with potential sources. Olivier Knox, president of the White House Correspondents Association, said, quote, "We're looking forward to an enjoyable evening of celebrating the First Amendment and great journalists past, present, and future." Trump announced earlier this month that he'd be skipping the dinner and opting instead to hold a rally in Green Bay, Wisconsin, the same night. "The dinner is so boring and so negative that we're going to hold a very positive rally," he said. This is the 3rd year in a row that Trump has skipped the dinner. After the dust-up following Michelle Wolf's comedic set last year, the White House Correspondents Association decided to invite presidential biographer Ron Chernow to be the featured speaker this year instead of the traditional comedian. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Before we get into weather from around the world, I want to make a program note for Networks Radio. We did a 2-hour block of the Mueller Report audio last night. Found a really good production of the audio reading of the report. And so it will be during our open court state of affairs block overnight, and that's at 2 a.m. on the West Coast, 5 a.m. on the East Coast. And we'll look to see if there's a place that we can put it on during the weekend. So we're going to try to fill up those 2-hour blocks with the report. They don't come in at that amount, but increments much smaller than that we stitched together. So to catch up, we had a full 2 hours, so we'll see how it goes in the next several nights. And do tune in for that and check the schedule and social media for any updates on the Mueller Report audio on Netroots Radio. Weather, we always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 50 degrees Fahrenheit. and we are expected to go to a high of 80 degrees today, which means it could be about 83. And overnight low in the low 50s. Partly cloudy conditions today. Right now we're sunny, though, and the winds are out of, just about the southeast, and at a negligible 1 to 2 miles per hour, which we affectionately call light and variable. We'll be picking up in a couple of hours and coming from the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour, continuing at that clip tonight, and then shifting ever so slightly out of the northwest, but continuing at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And of course, we know gusts can be more than that. The grass pollen has come down from high to moderate. The air quality index has gone up to 35 parts per million, still in the good range, though just about into moderate. And that daytime UV index is holding steady at 7, though that's in the very high range. And people, put on sunscreen. Do yourselves a favor. Barometric pressure is rising at 29.83 inches, and visibility is up to 10 miles, and the relative humidity is at 88%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted. These purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 62 and partly cloudy. Paris is 58 and mostly cloudy with a electrical and thunderstorm advisory. And I got to tell you, the boomers in Paris are scary. Oh my God. If you've ever felt them, and you don't just hear them, you feel them. It's pretty scary. So take care if you happen to be in Paris. It's beautiful anyway. Rome is 80 degrees and sunny. How nice. Kiev is 72 and fair. Kabul is 63 and partly cloudy. Hong Kong is 78 and fair. Tokyo is 66 and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 66 and clear. San Francisco, California is 55 degrees and fair. And New York is 60 degrees Fahrenheit. And fair as the Big Apple can be. And that's pretty damn fair. And that is weather from around the world. Brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Jonathan Allen, yes, that Jonathan Allen, brings us the first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro's Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. The U.S. has confirmed 695 measles cases so far this year, the highest level since the country declared it had eliminated the virus in the year 2000. And that was the CDC reported that yesterday, Wednesday. The resurgence, which public health officials blamed in part on the spread of misinformation about the safety of vaccines. And yes, we're looking at a hostile foreign power that writes in Cyrillic. Yes, we are. Has been concentrated mainly in Washington State and New York, with outbreaks that began late last year. The longer these outbreaks continue, the greater the chance measles will again get a sustained foothold in the U.S., the CDC warned. It said outbreaks can spread out of control in communities with lower than normal vaccination rates. Although the disease was eliminated from the country in 2000, meaning the virus was no longer continually present year-round, outbreaks still happen via travelers coming from countries where measles is still common. And the number of measles cases so far this year exceeds the 667 cases reported in all of 2014, and that was as of yesterday, Wednesday, which had been the highest annual number recorded since the elimination in 2000. The virus has been recorded in 22 states so far in 2019. The virus can lead to deadly complications, but no measles deaths have been reported in the latest outbreaks. The largest outbreak has been in New York City, where officials said at least 390 cases have been recorded since October, mostly among children and Orthodox Jewish communities in Brooklyn, making it the city's worst outbreak since 1991. That total included 61 cases recorded in the last 6 days, of which 2 were pregnant women. And that is not good, folks. The CDC echoed city health officials in saying this outbreak was fueled by misinformation being spread about the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, the MMR vaccine. A vocal fringe of parents opposes vaccines, believing, contrary to scientific studies, that ingredients in them can cause autism. Ah, boy. We're fighting a disease now in 2019 that should have been off the table in the 1960s with the development of this vaccine, Dr. Amish Adalja said, and he's an infectious disease expert with Johns Hopkins. It should be viewed as an embarrassment that so many Americans have turned away from vaccines, that we are having a record year for measles. And folks, it's not a joke. Property is always more valuable when delivered vacant to a hostile foreign power.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Raya Jalabi, also of Reuters, brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. This time last year, most of Iraq's historic marshlands were dry, desiccated by upstream damming and a chronic lack of rainfall. Now, local farmers are counting their blessings after unexpected heavy rainfall at the end of 2018 caused the dams to overflow by early January, and water came rushing back to the wetlands in southeastern Iraq. For Yunus Khalil, a farmer raising water buffalo in the Central Marsh, the lack of water meant he had to sell most of his herd at a loss last year. We were terrified the water would not come back, Khalil said. It would have been the end for us. The marshes, thought to be the biblical Garden of Eden and named a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2016, are experiencing their highest water levels since they were reclaimed in 2003. God knows how much we suffered last year, Khalil said. God protected us. Saddam Hussein accused the area's inhabitants, the Marsh Arabs, of treachery during the 1980-88 war with Iran and later drained the marshes, which before then had stretched across more than 3,700 square miles to flush out rebels. Well, I was mistaken. It was the first Gulf War, and he didn't like the Marsh Arabs. So they, looks like through a confluence of just letting the water come back and some of the environment, the Marsh Arabs have a life once again. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, and of course we're going to be back tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Friday, so stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert,
des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver.